But you're in the picture.
Go for it.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Don Schrader, and this is a meeting of the Big Sioux Bee Lovers and Mentors Group. So, first I want to welcome everybody, especially the newcomers. We have a privilege here today to have two really good speakers for this meeting. We got Don Galpin. Yep. Don's going to talk about Mite control and that type of thing here, and he's going to answer questions afterwards.
Done.
And then we've got Dale Hill sitting back here. Dale?
Joel.
Dale's a bee mentor, and he's got more degrees than he's a bee expert. He's been on several different committees, and he's chaired different deals. Oh, and then we got one more that's going to be speaking with Don here, and that's Joel Stearns. Him and Don are going to conduct this first portion. Now, I want to especially welcome you newcomers. This is a really informal group, and the reason we started this group was support for each other for small beekeepers raising bees. It's tough to do this alone, and with the support of a group, if you got questions, you can meet friends, you can ask friends, and you got support to help you learn how to do it and to do a better job. So that's kind of why the group was started. At the end of each section, there will be a question and answer period for your newcomers. Don't be afraid to ask a question. As you can see, I'm not a seasoned chairman here, so bear with me a little bit. But with that being said, I'm going to introduce Don for the first part, Don and Joel for the first part of this, and then when this section's done, I'm going to introduce Dale to run the second part here a little bit informally. Ask some questions. Is that all right, Dale? Sounds good.
Okay, what were we supposed to talk about?
You see what you got to put up with around this group?
Now, I'm not the most organized person in the world, neither is he. So,
as you notice, I just got here.
Yeah.
But in my defense, I still have to work a 12.5-hour shift.
yeah, so yeah, I mean, if I was organized, I'd have papers for you and stuff to look at and stuff. So.
Are you okay with that?
We're both kind of more like, oops, there's a squirrel there. I guess we're here, we're going to talk about splits, which at the same time I'm going to kind of discuss putting in bee packages and nukes at the same time, kind of tie that all together with splits. And then after that, we'll talk about the mite control, the different types of mite control. There's a couple of them that I've done, that I've used. There's a few more I'm going to mention that are kind of interesting, but I don't know about. But I think for the most part, we'll just kind of wing it and see whatever. And if you got questions, just interrupt me. Don't worry about that. This is actually one of our, minus these two frames, this is actually one of our hives bodies that we have set up because our nukes are coming in Monday evening. Anybody's getting nukes from Teresa, they'll be here Monday evening. So I've got this set up, a simple bottom board and one deep. I've got it set up for, this one's set up for a 5-frame nuke. If they're 4-frame nukes, I'll just throw a frame of something or other in there. But we got these set up, and if you want to come look at these later on or whatever, that's fine. I got one frame on the outside that's got lots of honey around it. You know, it's a pretty heavy frame with honey and stuff. On the outside edge, I've got one frame that's just foundation we did last year, and they never filled it out. They're just throwing it in here for a spacer, give them something to work on when they start. This is another frame that's got a lot of honey on it. Generally, I put all the honey at the outside edge, but if you look, it's got a really nice brood chamber frame there for laying eggs and stuff. I wanted to get that in there, so if the queen starts laying right away, I wanted her to have some really good foundation to go off of. Same thing with that. It's a good brood chamber frame. It's got the, you can see it more on this side. It's got the honey around the corners and stuff. But it's a nice, clean, good shape. There's mostly good brood comb. There's no drone comb in it or anything. This one here is loaded. It's got honey around the outside, but where the brood would be is loaded with pollen. So I try to get a good solid pollen frame or 2 partials in every one before I get to set up for the nuke, to drop the nuke in, or even a package bees. Same thing. And same thing if you're splitting a hive. You need all this stuff before you get the brood and the brood chamber and the eggs and bees and stuff in there. You need a couple frames that's got honey, they gotta have some food. They gotta have some pollen so they can start producing brood right away, and they gotta have somewhere for the queen to lay. They can clean up relatively quickly, but they'll clean up a lot. It's pretty amazing what they'll clean up. It's a pretty nasty comb. They'll clean up really nice.
The pollen is so important because honey is a carbohydrate, while the pollen for the bees is their protein. So if you're raising young, you got to make sure they get enough protein.
So then we got that set up now. So if I get a 5-frame nuke, I can just take that whole 5-frame nuke and drop it right in here. And it's done. It's ready to go. Put the lid on it, give it a week or 4 days, and then check and see how they're doing and make sure everything's good. And make sure they're good and strong and filling everything before you go and throw a second brood chamber on. There's some problems if you can cause some problems if you put the second brood chamber on too soon. I don't know exactly what all the issues are, but I do know they won't fill everything out. They'll just go right up the middle in both chambers. They won't fill out the outside edges right away. And when we put, when we put a package or a nuke in, if anybody's not familiar with packages, this is what they come in. Bees come in here. There's a can here with tiny holes in it that's got syrup in there. That's upside down. They can get the syrup so they can eat while they're in transit. And then you got the little box inside there that has the queen inside of it that they're already getting used to while they're traveling to you.
When you buy a package, the queen is new to the bees. They literally take the bees and shake them out of colonies and just throw them in the crate with a new queen. I mean, yes, she's had her mating flight, so she's ready to go, but she is inexperienced and completely new. And that's where a nuke is so much better, is because the bees have been living together. They have brood in process, which that alone is about a 21-day start. That they're 21 days ahead of a package when you first put them in. It takes about 21 days from egg to...
That is one of the benefits of it. However, and I talked to, what's your name? Kevin this morning, when we came in here. He'd prefer to have package bees instead of a nuke that's already got brood and a queen and everything established, because those nukes are made up generally down south where they have problems with beetles and mites, way worse than we do up here. They've got a lot more problems. So if you're getting package bees, then you're probably not getting beetles and mites with your bees, so you're starting out with cleaner bees. They're going to be a month behind because they're going to have to start, and the queen's going to have to start laying. It's going to be 3 weeks before if she starts laying right away, before anything starts hatching, it's going to be at least 3 weeks. So you're going to be 3 weeks behind, but you are probably starting with a little bit cleaner bees. So that's a very good point that you made.
It's a push. If there's I've done it both ways.
Oh, absolutely. And we do it both ways too. We've done it both ways. We've got half a dozen of these down in the basement from last time we did it, and we've got nukes coming this year. So it's a 6 one, half dozen the other, whatever you prefer. But either way works. It's just these are probably gonna be cleaner. You're probably not gonna have the mite and the beetle issues that you might have with nukes, but they're 21 days behind. So if they come later in the year, you know, they're not gonna be built up strong enough for the main part of the honeycomb. So it's still gonna work, but they'll be a little behind. But like I say, the nukes, they come up, they're ready to go, they're farther ahead, but you need to treat them right away for mites. Generally, we don't have a problem with beetles. Does anybody have a problem with beetles? And they
I did, as soon as I got.
Did ya?
As soon as I got.
With some news
As soon as
that
I
you
got
got.
news, boom.
Right.
I've been there 10 years, never had beetles.
Yeah, see, and I've never personally had a problem with beetles, but they will come up with the news. So you got to treat for them too, and I've got a couple options there for that too. So, but these are set up. You can take this can out, take the queen out. There's a little cork in here that plugs this hole in the end, and inside, after you pop the cork out, there's actually, it's like fondant, it's like sugar cake in there, a plug made out of sugar in there. Also, generally they have that sugar plug in these, don't they?
Yes, yeah.
So you just pop that plastic cork out, and you can leave her back in here if you want, and they'll eat that sugar out, and that gives her a little more time to adapt. And you can actually take, a lot of people just tip it upside down, shake the bees into their hive and stuff, and then set this box in front of the hive and let whatever's left crawl in there and stuff. But you can actually take, they've got these on there, take 4 frames out, so you got 4 frames open, and just set that right in the hive, and put your lid on there, and they're gonna come out of that box over the next day, and they're gonna move out, and they're gonna start moving into the comb, onto the comb instead of in the box. They don't like that big empty box. Then you just pop the lid off, take this out, put your queen in between, or if she's already out, good, either way. But you can do that, or you can just dump them in there. Either way works. Some people don't like taking bees and shaking them up and dumping them in there, so
And they
either
actually,
or.
they
But
actually,
that's what these boards on top are for, so you just set it right down in the hive and just let them come out naturally.
they make a fancy, it's a plastic cardboard funnel that you can put on the front. So you can actually have your hive all set up and just kind of shake them in, you tuck the queen in between the frames and then shake them, and then it kind of funnels them down into the hive. And that's supposed to be, you know, more gentle and everything on them.
I've actually seen video where they like put a sheet in front of the hive and then they dump the bees down below and then they can walk up, and that way any of them that are weaker or any beetles or whatever would not.
Yes, and you can do that with package bees, absolutely. And that, I get way off subject there, but you can do that with package bees. Just lay a sheet or plastic or whatever out in front of the hive entrance. And then you take this little thing with the queen in it, and you open this up, you put that little package in there, squeeze it between a couple frames, put the queen in the hive. And then all them bees are gonna get, or lay her in front of the entrance, you know, right. And then they're gonna smell her and they're gonna naturally gravitate to go into the hive.
This, by the way, is only one style of queen cages. There's a number of them. This one here is a plastic one that we've had, and this is obviously had the candy chewed out of it, you know, to release it. When you put these in, do not put the candy plug down. The queen is normally not by herself. There will usually be one or a few attendant bees with her. And there's been cases where an attendant bee dies, ends up in the bottom, and then the queen can't get out. So that's why you tend to put these in, ventilation either up or down, and then the sideways.
And then there's also this thing here, this one's broke, but it's just a jaw, and it's got openings, screen, it's vented open on the sides and stuff. It's a jaw. You can actually, in a complete hive, you can pull, if you find the queen, you can just take this and catch the queen and hold the queen in this particular thing here. set her off to the side while you're working the hive. Less chance of damaging the queen or hurting the queen, or you know where she's at. Also, and this is something that I just found out about, but and it kind of goes back to the mite control thing, but I'll touch on it just real quick, is guys are saying they take these and they catch the queen, and they just leave this in the hive with the queen in it. The other bees can still get to the queen to feed her through these openings, but she can't get out. And what they'll do is they'll leave this in the hive like that for 21 days. In that 21 days, all the brood in the hive will hatch. So there will be no capped brood in the hive. And so all the beetles in the hive, or the mites in the hive, will be exposed. There won't be any capped brood for them to be hiding in with. So they do it for mite control. So you get a hive that's got the queen still there, but she's not laying for 21 days. So then everything hatches, so all the comb is open, all the bees are exposed, all the comb is exposed, everything is exposed. Then you can do your oxalic acid treatment or whatever treatment you decide to use. But there's no place for the beetles or the mites to hide inside the hive if there's no capped brood. They can't really hide.
That way, one treatment gets them all.
Yep. It's very productive. It slows down your brood, and you only want to do it on a really good, strong hive. You don't want to do it on a really weak hive, of course, because then you're going to have to wait another 21 days for the next batch of brood to hatch. But it is very effective for mite control. So this is just to catch a queen. So, okay, now back to package bees. Nukes the same way. I've got my honey / pollen frames on the outside, and I've got a frame or two that have really good area for her to start laying in. That's relatively clean, that they can clean up quickly so she can start laying right away. And then I just drop the nuke in the center of it, and they'll work their way out. Put the cap on it, there again, and wait a week, and then go check them and make sure everything's okay. Or you don't have to wait a week, but I generally do a week. And then check them out, make sure they're good, and make sure they're filling everything out and get everything clean, make sure they're good and strong before you put that second box over them, because you can't overwhelm them. And the other thing I like to do, it's not necessary all the time, but I like to reduce the front entrance. Our front entrance is wide open all the way across. When you put a nuke in or starting a split even, when you have lower numbers of bees, it's good to block that off part way. It gives them less of an area. They have to have less bees to protect their opening from other bees or whatever, moths, ants, whatever. They don't have to work so hard to protect the hive. They can work on building the hive more. And then once the hive gets full and big, then you want to open it up so they got plenty of ventilation, plenty of access, and everything working good. So that kind of covers the packages and the nukes, putting them in. And like I say, I've done it too where I put in a nuke and I put in 6 frames of this because I had no comb to go with them. I put in 6 frames of this. It takes a little longer to go because they got to use, what is it, how much honey can they?
About 7 pounds of honey
To make
makes
1
a pound of wax.
So the more wax they have to build out, the less honey you're going to get. So it's better to have older frames that already have stuff in them that they can use and use them up than it is to put all new frames in. But I have done it.
Do you always use 2 brood boxes?
I always do before I put a honey super on. I do, yes, absolutely. There again, I'm sure there's other ways of doing it. I've seen people that just use 1 and just start putting supers on.
I've seen people that do 3 as well.
Yeah,
End up with just a monster
I
column.
think generally though, I think everybody pretty much, as a golden rule, everybody pretty much does 2 brood chambers. The deep brood chambers, I think. Everybody I've ever worked with or for has done that.
There are people that don't use the deeps for brood chambers. They just use a regular super.
Yeah, you don't have to use the deeps, you can use a medium or a shallow.
They're lighter weight, they're easier to handle.
Yep, yep. They don't care if you put put 4 of these instead of 2 of these, or 3 of these instead of 2 of these. They don't care.
Can I add something one thing?
Yeah.
That might help you out? You know, when you're talking about foundation before with the wax on it, you can buy foundation with wax on for starters. And what I did last time is I put actually beeswax, got a little roller, and I took a roller, beeswax up. Whatever.
Yep.
Some people do that also. And I think that helps you get started too, because you don't have to build off the top.
The plastic foundations, there are people that absolutely love them. From what I've seen, just personal observation is, bees will build out first wax foundation. The second they will build out is white plastic foundation.
With the wax coat.
Yes, with the wax coat. Third will be the black foundation.
And this is the black, you see, they started drawing it out, but they never actually finished. There's still a lot of black foundation out here that they haven't finished out. The other side has got tons of pollen in here, tons of honey here, but they just never finished filling out the back side of it too. So, yeah. And you can buy foundation that has no wax on it at all. They really don't like that. It doesn't matter if it's white or black. If it has no wax on it at all, they really don't like it. But like I say,
The other option is like this one. This is kind of hard to tell, but you notice that there's blanks in here. This never had foundation. Okay? You got the magic cap.
we do this for other reasons, but you can do it with the deeps too, and they'll make their own foundation. They'll make their own comb, everything in there. We start out with a frame like this, and these particular frames, when we buy them, there's a little piece you break off, and then you put your foundation in, and then you put that piece back in there and tack it on the top to hold your foundation in. We actually put that piece up and down, right down the middle of the frame. And they'll start building right off of that wooden frame there. They'll start building right down, and they'll actually build their own comb all the way down, fill that whole thing with comb, and fill it full of honey. And then what we've got, and we don't have it here, again off topic, but you started it. We've got a cookie cutter. These ones that don't have any foundation or any wire in them, we've got a cookie cutter that cuts out chunks, and we can cut these out and put them in these plastic containers, and then you have capped honey, capped wax. It's capped on both sides, full frame. It's about the right thickness. We just cut these out, and rather than extracting it and getting the honey, you got honey combs and put it in these boxes, and it lasts forever. I mean, the shelf life is, yeah. But yeah, we do that too, just the wooden frame, but we mostly do that in our honey supers, not in our brood chambers. And then they just keep filling it out, so we do that.
And this one was actually wired. So that, and they just incorporate the wires as they build in, so.
Yeah, I think that one had a foundation in it, and something happened, it melted out, and it disappeared and stuff. These two frames, I brought them in, and unfortunately you can't see it. But we had hives, 10 of our hives, 9 of our hives last year. We got spray, killed all our hives. This particular hive, both these frames, there's a couple little, you can see a couple little spots of brood in there. And you can't see it now because it's been a year, but these hives were plumb empty, no bees whatsoever in hive. This hive was, the other ones had a lot of dead bees. No brood, the cat brood was all dead, no fresh brood, no larva, I mean, whatsoever. But it was full of eggs, just eggs. There was no larva whatsoever, just eggs and some odd ones that never hatched out. I don't exactly know what the deal was with that one. That one died before the other ones that got sprayed. But it was just kind of odd. I wish I could have saved that, because I left the eggs still in there, but you can't see them because they pretty much decomposed away. But this, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of honey, plenty of pollen. Bees were completely gone out of the hive. There's no bees in the hive whatsoever. But all these brood frames were laid plumb full of eggs. Every one of them. So that was kind of an odd, I don't know what, if I did something wrong or what happened.
Blame it on him.
Yeah, usually, yeah. Okay, so anyway, let's see, where are we at? So we kind of talked, does anybody got any question about packages or the nukes, putting the nukes in here, getting them started?
Just a
couple of additional comments.
Yeah.
One is when you if you put the queen in that small box, make sure that it's oriented to where the bees can get to it. I've seen new beekeepers put that up against the frame next to it, and then the other bees can't get to it, can't get to feed the
Yeah, I made the comment about the ventilation and stuff, either up or down.
Either up or down, or
And it's both ventilation and for the other bees to be able to get to her, smell
That's a very
her.
important point. The other thing that I've done is, even with the wax frames, is to spray them with sugar water before you put your bees in there. That usually helps.
It does, okay. Yes, I never thought about that.
Not in every case, but if you've lost some wax off the frame, if it's got hot, or up the foundation, if it's gotten hot, or for whatever reason you've lost some of that wax coating, the sugar water may or may not help. But on the wax itself, it will help get those bees started.
Okay.
Quicker.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I've never done that, but yeah, I can see
I've-
how that would work.
Yeah, I've heard of that as well.
Should it be 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 mix?
At this point, 1-to-1. The other thing is whether you're starting nukes or packages or splits, you want to make sure you feed them like crazy.
Yep.
I usually use 2 quart bottles,
We have
and
these,
there's
that's,
times that they would go through that in a day.
as long as the bees can't.
You feed 2-to-1 sugar?
We've actually got some, you can put your sugar water in here, we got these type of feeders, that just put your sugar water in there, you screw it in,
We use 2-to-1.
and then it slides right in the front
Doesn't
of
matter.
that.
The bees don't care.
I don't have any other ones with us, but you know, there's somewhere, it's like this inner lid here, but it's round, and you can actually put it on here, that's your alcohol. Put that on there like that, and it's cut out so they can get to it, put that on like that, then you just put an empty box over top of it and a lid on top of that, and that, they can feed off of that too. So, and yeah, they make several different types. You can get the ones that you take a couple frames out, slide it in there, fill it full, and it's got a screen that they can go down in and get back out and stuff. Several different, but yes, it's a very good point. You need to feed the bees. When you put a package in or you put a nuke in, you really need to feed it. And we've got just chicken water, like a 4 gallon? 5 gallon?
4 or 5 gallon.
Chicken water, and we got some material in where the tray fills up and around the bottom. We got some mesh material in there that we can just fill it up, put it up, and then they can walk around on it. They can get the sugar water, but they can't drown it. And we feed them that way too, just out in the middle of the yard, let them all come to it and feed the whole community.
We just use cheap rocks. We just use cheap rocks.
Yeah, rocks work too. Yeah, absolutely.
In the tray.
Yep. Yep.
Does that have to be a certain distance from the
You know,
It's better if it's at least a distance, some distance, 50, 100 feet. Because otherwise, when you're feeding them, there are instances that you can encourage robbing behavior. And that you really don't want.
right. And there again, if you do run into a robbing situation, off topic again, but You can, there again, if you have a weak hive and there's a problem, they're trying to rob it out, you can put an entrance reducer in there again. If it's weak, put an entrance reducer in there, give them less area to protect. So they can give them a little extra support to protect their hive. If you do run into a robbing issue. But when I did commercial beekeeping, we'd go Texas and do our bees and come back, and that's later. Nope, steal my problem. We would take 55-gallon barrels, throw straw in it, fill them full of corn syrup, and put it right in the middle of the whole hive. I mean, you'll have 96 hives the size of this room here, and they'll just drop it right on the edge, one edge or the other, and feed them all right there. So, I mean, I've heard it both ways. I don't know that it really is a big deal. But I know if you're gonna, what I have seen and heard, if you're gonna like take your comb after you've extracted it and put it out and let the bees clean it up, they're actually cleaning up honey, not corn syrup or sugar water. You want to keep those further away, because if they're actually cleaning up honey supers, then they're more likely to start trying to rob honey out of another box. So if you're going to take your honey supers after you extract them, put them out in the field, put them further away so they're not around your bee yard. And then, let's see. So I guess anybody got questions on putting in packages or nukes, or just basic setup of the hive? Anybody got any more questions on that?
How big is the hole you put in the top of the water jug that you use for feeding?
Pin
For feeding? Oh, they're just tiny little pinholes.
It should be pinholes.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, that one's.
They're just tiny little pinholes. Because what you want to do, when you flip that over, you don't want it all running out. You want it to, some of it's going to drip out, but it'll cause a vacuum inside there. And then the bees actually have to kind of reach up into these or go to these holes and pull it out, what they need. You don't want it to run all over and run out in front of your hive. So it's just tiny, tiny little holes in this. For the feed.
The ratio for sugar to water, how much water?
Right now, 1-to-1, is that what you're thinking too?
2 to 1.
The bees really don't care.
Generally, we did in the fall, we did 2 to 1.
Yeah, the bees really don't care, but the typical recommendation is 1-to-1 in the spring, 2-to-1 in the fall.
In the fall, yeah.
They'll get rid of the moisture, they don't have to get rid of the moisture, but they don't, right, they'll get rid of it anyway.
Right.
They'll do their own thing.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So running that is that feeder.
That's a feeder, yes, that you can take, and that's what we're talking about with them little bitty holes. This one's got bigger holes, that comes later on, we'll talk about that. But yeah, you just put your sugar water in here and screw this lid on, and it's got them tiny little holes in it. And then it just, when you tip it upside down, it kind of causes a vacuum and won't let it run out. If they can get into those, their little tongues or whatever can get into those holes and get the sugar water out and feed them. And then they can just come right out of the hive in here, they don't even have to fly, they just go right in there, take it, bring it right back into the hive.
And you can use a lot bigger jar.
Same way, yeah, absolutely, you can use quart jars or whatever you get, you can put a gallon jar on. Same way with putting it on top like this.
Can I give you a bee hack?
And then put another box around it, what's that?
I'll give you a bee hack. You take the cans that you have, that came with,
Yep.
with the packages, you drill a hole in that, and you fill those up, and you plug the hole, and you set that right back down.
Yep, absolutely. These only have like 3, the same size, tiny little holes. They're just like 3 of them. But you can drill a hole on the opposite end and refill these and actually reuse these cans. You know, you can just put drill a hole in there, fill it up, put a piece of duct tape over it, put a cork in it or whatever, plug the top of it, and then just reuse these cans too. You don't have to buy the jars and that, and you just set that can right there like that, and then go to town and clean it up, put a box around it, an empty box around it, a lid over it, and yeah, just like that. Put a lid on it, and you're good to go. And then you don't even have to get into the bees to feed them. You just pop this off, refill it, put it back on there, put it all back together, and feed them again, and keep feeding.
We were just discussing how much to heat the water before putting the sugar in, and do you even have to, you don't have to
Use warm water,
still
right?
water?
I use warm water.
Not hot.
enough so that the sugar
Sugar
dissolves.
dissolves.
Right?
So, not to cook.
Yeah, you don't need to cook it, and you don't wanna put it out for the bees until it's cooled down some.
But you don't have to heat it, it'll still dissolve, it just takes longer. It's quicker, if the water's warm, it dissolves quicker. It'll still dissolve, even if it's cold water, it just takes quite a bit longer. The heat helps it dissolve quicker.
Where I've been making that at is I don't have a hot water heater at this point. So I just basically boil 6 quarts of water and dump it in the bucket with cold water and then add my sugar and stuff to it. And then it ends up being, well, maybe 70-degree water. But that way I can just dump it right out and it's ready for the bees.
I got a question for you.
Yep.
When you're done extracting your honey off, this is a little off, but I was thinking about when you mentioned the frames, and when you put those frames back on the bee yard to be cleaned, I got a rack thing I'm gonna put them in. How far away from the hive should I keep that?
I'd like to see them, 100 yards or more away.
100 yards or more?
I would like to, that's my thought, I don't know
Just asking.
if there's an actual distance
I don't
or,
know,
I just like
100
to.
yards is a good number because,
Because when you're putting
you'll
honey
have bees
supers,
galore if you don't.
because when you're putting supers out full of comb that's been extracted, it's still got a lot of honey in there.
Yep.
You're basically giving them what is essentially a hive body to rob. So you don't want to encourage them to do that in their own backyard. You want them further away.
Okay.
If you're gonna teach them to do bad things.
Right. Send them to the neighbor's house. That's right. All right, so then, anybody else questions or comments? I know you want to say something.
I guess I got one other comment, and that
Yeah.
is, when you check for that sugar plug in your queen
Yeah.
thing, when you pull that cork out or whatever is there, put your finger over the end of that. I don't know how many times I've heard the stories of them doing that.
Clean that away.
And away goes the queen.
Yeah.
Lost $35.
Some,
I did last spring, we did splits. And we split 4 into 10, and we did splits, and we bought queens, and we put the queen cages in, and I generally wait a week. I didn't this time. I waited 3 days. I come back, they're doing good. There's one hive, she's not out of the thing yet, so okay, I'm gonna just take a little piece of wire and I'm gonna scrape that stuff and get it loosened up and put her back in there so she can get, I scraped it, she flew out, flew right over back.
Oh, no.
She came
$38.
back to the hive.
Yeah.
I could not believe it. She came back to the hive. I could not believe it. I went back the next day and she was there.
And if there isn't a sugar plug in there, the small marshmallows work great to plug that hole for a few days.
Oh, yeah, I'll bet. I never thought of that.
yeah, that's a good
The
idea.
little bitty marshmallows, plug that hole back in.
Yeah,
They'll
so,
go
Or if you want to
Some-
reuse one of them,
yeah,
or if you want to reuse one of them, to introduce a different queen out of a different hive into one, whatever, that would work good.
yeah, sometimes you'll get a caged queen that just has a plug. They do not have the candy in there to serve as a time delay. And those you have to release manually. So,
And that's generally where you're gonna run into that though, is like we did, we split our own bees and then we bought a queen in a queen cage and put it in our bees. Generally, when you buy a package, that package is gonna be in the mail for a day or two. They've already gotten used to the scent of that queen. So if she gets out right away, it's probably not as big of an issue as if you're just taking a queen and introducing it to a hive. That you want to make sure they've got a day or two to acclimate to her and decide that they're going to accept her. That's really important with a pack doing splits, and we're going to get into splits here now too. That's next on the list.
hey, I was saying, an interesting note. If you ever buy packaged bees, I've gone down to Dayton in Sioux City, Iowa, and picked up my bees. interesting because these are actually cut in between. Okay, they just staple these on top. So they'll have another box starting about right here. And there'll be a raft of like 5 of these. Then they pile those up on a pallet about so high. And their back room will have pallet after pallet after pallet. It's really kind of mind-boggling to see that many bees all as packages. It's
Kelly Lyons.
what?
Kelly Lyons, is that what you're dealing with down there?
No, Dayton.
What David, Kelly Lyons is the guy that's doing it.
Oh.
Yeah, I never know if it's.
I've picked them up at Dayton themselves.
Yeah, that's where they're at, well, that's.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so, before we get into splits, real quick, I'm gonna just mention these. If anybody has not seen them and not familiar with them, queen excluders, some people love them, some people hate them. Whatever you wanna do, there's 2 different types of queen excluders. We use them. I just like to keep, most of the time. I like to keep my queen down in the bottom 2 boxes and not up in the honey supers. So we use them. You just lay it on top of there, put your second box on, of course, have 2 boxes deep, lay it on top of there, and then you just take your honey super and set it right on top of that. Put your lid on here, your inner cover. We use an inner cover. And then our lids are a little wider than this. They stick out a little ways. And we actually cut a little notch in there to line up with these. Gives them a little easier access for top access.
The slot, some people want to do the slot this way. Other people do the slots this way. Don't know that it matters, but they seem to like it either way.
The difference is, in wintering, you can put it like this, because they're not gonna be doing that, and you can put your box on it, feed them whatever you wanna do, or put them like, put food on top and stuff. You get a little extra gap there. But this is designed so that the thin side, the short side, is your bee space between your top bars and this opening. However, if you got one like this, that the board is warped a little bit, now you're setting it on there, and in the center here, it's only got a little thin little gap. What you can do is, my thing you stole from me, you can take a little piece of wood or wedge like this, lay it on top of your frames in the middle here, and then set this down, and then when you put your box, your lid on top of it, it'll push the sides down and seal it, but that opens up your opening in the middle for your bee space for them to get in and out. They do warp sometimes, and so just throw something in there.
The magic bee space, by the way, is 3/8 of an inch.
Yep, so this really isn't even wide enough. You have to break it, split it like that, then put it in like that, and then it'd be thick enough for the bee space.
Vandalizing my wedges.
Yep. But, and like I say, you put that in there, your inner cover's gonna go like this, but as soon as you put your lid on, it'll push it all down evenly all the way around, and that'll keep your space. And then, like I say, we router out these edges so that no matter if this gets pushed all the way back or forward, they can still get out either end of the top of the lid. That's just something we do. Not really 100% necessary, but that's what we do. So, and then we got this handy dandy. You use pull frames out instead of trying to break them. Use your fingers or pry out.
There is a magic thing that he always forgets to use.
It's at my house.
Oh, it's at your house? Okay. He stole it. But it's just a little frame that hangs on the outside. And then it's got 2 bars that stick out. And then you can take the frames out and drop them.
You just take them out and you can set the frames out here. And then you have 2 bars going on either side of the frame. You can stack them out so you don't make a mess. And you don't take them out and set them on the floor like I usually do. Set them on the ground like I usually do. That's supposed to be a no-no, but I do it all the time.
I've taken it and hung that on the side.
And I still do it.
And he'll sit there and he's leaving the frames up. It's like, come on, Don.
Okay, so that kind of covers the split, or the packages, the nukes. Splits are gonna be the same basic concept. You're still gonna want these out here. You're gonna be going through, like we did 4 hives, we turned 4 hives into 8 hives. So you're gonna be I had all 4 of them hives opened up, and all 8 of the other boxes set out, and I'm taking brood from this one and putting them and trying to divide it all evenly between all of them, brood and eggs and everything as much as I can. And then the honey on the outside, try and divide it all as much as I can evenly between all of them, so they're all about the same size. We bought queens, I used 2 of the original queens, we killed 2 of the original queens intentionally, and replaced and bought 8 queens, and the 2 that I saved, and then we put the 8 queens, and put 8 new queens in the ones that we didn't kill with, so.
So when you do that, do you worry about the bees trying to go back to the hive that they?
They will. We didn't do it. Generally what I do is I will split everything, the brood and everything all evenly and stuff, and then I'll even take and we'll make sure that the bee population is even as possible too. So if I got one that's really got a lot of bees in it, one that doesn't have much, I'll just come over and pull the frame out and I'll shake them into that other one. The bees are always, when you're doing this, you're doing it during the day, so you got field bees out in the field. Them field bees are going to come back to the original hive if you leave it in the same spot it was in. They're going to come back to that. So if that has almost hardly any bees at all in it, it's going to be full by that night. Because all the field bees are going to come right back to it. Generally what we always did, when I did it commercially with the big guys, we'd do 150 of them in a yard at a time. We'd have 10 people run around, one guy running around with brood, and one guy running around hollering at each other for brood or pollen or whatever we needed. We would never leave the parent hive in the same position. We always took them and moved them to a different position. So the theory was all the field bees that come back, they'd come back, that hive wouldn't be there, so they'd kind of find their way to wherever. And all the other bees that were just in all the boxes, they just all got mixed up and confused, and they don't know who's the right bees coming in or who's not or whatever. So in theory, it all evened itself out. But yes, if you do a split off, if you split this into 3, okay, or 2, it doesn't matter. You always, and you're going to leave that parent hive in the same position, you always want to make sure this new split has a little bit more brood, eggs and larvae, whatever, and a little bit more bees, because the field bees are going to come back to this original hive at night. So they're going to fill back up with bees. And then those field bees, if this hive is short on bees to take care of the brood, some of those field bees will actually revert back to nurse bees and stay back and take care of the brood till some of the brood starts hatching, and then they'll go back out and start working again. So they will take care of themselves. Generally, when you're doing a split, most people, they'll split up the stuff. If they're going to keep the queen, they'll find her. It's always better to find the queen. You don't have to, but it's always better to find the queen. Know where she's at and visually look at her, make sure she's healthy, not having any issues or whatever, and know which box she's in. You can't just split stuff back and forth, and if you don't find her, you don't find her. Generally, you'll know by the sound of the bees which hive she's in, because the ones that she's not in are going to be very agitated after about 15, 20 minutes. It don't take long. They get very agitated, and the ones that have the queen in them will still be calm, relatively calm. As a general rule, it's not always, but...
So some colonies are just generally pissed off.
Yeah, yes. But then you take or you find a queen, you decide I'm going to do splits and I'm going to put all new queens in. I don't want any of my old queens. You try and find that queen and kill her, because if you don't kill her and you put the new queen in there, then them two are going to fight and you don't know which one of them's going to survive. So So it's always best to find a queen, whether you plan on keeping her or getting rid of her, it's always best to find a queen. But you don't have to. You can do a walk-away split. You can pop the top off of this, set it over here, and put a lid on both of them and walk away. One of them's gonna have a queen, one of them's not. The problem with that is, the one that doesn't have a queen, they're gonna try and make a new queen. If you don't have, you have to make sure you have eggs or very young larvae in both hives. Because if they don't have the queen, then they're gonna need something to make a new queen out of. And it's generally like a 3-day-old egg, or 2 or 3-day-old larva. Is that what they generally?
The younger the better.
Right, but
Preferably
once
less-
they've started from egg to
preferably less
larva.
than a day.
Right, the first, yep. But they will actually, if you don't do it for them, they will actually pick one out and start feeding that one royal jelly, and they'll build a bigger, and they'll build a queen cell.
This right here is the start of queen cell. So,
Yeah, and they'll make their own queen. They'll move an egg into that, fill it full of royal jelly, feed it up, they'll make their own queen. You can do that. But you have to, it has to have at least eggs in both boxes to do that. If you're not gonna let them make their own queen, if you're just gonna buy a queen, take this box off, set it over there, leave this box here, split it, walk away, go back in a couple days, figure out which one's got the queen, throw a new queen in cage in the one that don't have a queen, and when she releases, she'll start laying, and they'll be generally just fine.
and if you,
I've had really good luck doing that, actually.
yeah,
What's the advantage of killing an established queen and replacing it?
Well, because you got a fresh queen. You don't necessarily know how old your queen is, or what kind of shape she's in, or how much longer she's got before she needs to go. And a lot of people, if you're doing 20, 30, 40 of them at a time, you don't want to mess around with finding out, deciding if she's good or bad or not. You just order however many queens, you're gonna do how many splits, you order them queens, you just kill all the old queens, start with new queens, you know what you got. That's kind of the bonus of that.
I had a set of markers set aside for,
Oh, I didn't bring those.
he didn't bring them. But it's basically a water-based marker that is used for marking the queen. And there's a set series of colors that you go through. It cycles through every 5 years. So you can actually put the dot on the queen and there's an official, color for a particular year ending in like 5 or 6 or 1 or 2. That way you know how old the queen is. And that little dot of color makes it so much easier to find the queen.
Way easier.
So,
So generally, when I order queens, they're already marked. I mean, most places they're marked. If they're not, you give them an extra buck or whatever, they'll mark them before they send them out. I mean, usually we get marked queens. It's just easier to find a queen when they're in the hive. But yeah, like I say, if we're doing a split, we're gonna let them make their own queen. We let them make their own queen. You can find her. We can just mark her. We know how old she is by just looking at the color on the back. They're not gonna be more than 5 years old, so generally, I mean, I don't know, what is it, like 3 years?
Usually 3 years is the
Yeah.
max.
Yeah,
If you have a 2-year-old queen, she's getting old.
Yeah, right. So usually by 3 years, they've either decided
gone.
that she ain't no good, killed her, or she swarmed and left, or whatever. It's
And
rare to find one over 3 years.
Back to your question, the main reason to kill a queen is an aggressive hive.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
What did he say?
If you've got an
The main
aggressive
reason to
hive,
kill a queen is
if
an
you've got
aggressive
one
hive.
hive that's really mean, yep, order a queen, kill that queen, put a new queen in there. By the time she goes through her next cycle of laying and her next brood starts hatching, 21 days, it'll calm down drastically. It makes a huge difference. Absolutely. I never thought of that.
it also allows you to change the genetics of the hive,
Yep.
the bees that you have.
Because if you kill that queen and you still maintain her eggs, that colony will typically stay as an aggressive hive.
Yeah, because that
That's
new
why you
queen still got
replace
her
the
genetics.
queens. You get completely different genetics.
Yep.
Yep.
That new queen that they make themselves has still got her genetics. So, yeah, that's a good point.
And that's where, if you put a new queen in, literally, in less than one season, every bee's been replaced. You now have completely different genetic hive. So, and there's a lot of interesting things done. There are Vero-specific hygienic bees, Minnesota Hygienics. There are the Saskatraz, which came out of Canada, which are also a hygienic bee. They're also supposed to overwinter real well. Ours all died, but Don's is...
Joel and Don came over and they helped and they requeened. We split one of the hives into 3 and then we put 3 of those queens in those hives and they have done really well. Those hives are clean. When I open them up this spring, after winter, they really keep their hive clean. I noticed that, and they survive the winter pretty well. When I treated them with oxalic
That's
acid,
why we pick those, because they're supposed to overwinter real well and be really clean. But
when I treated them with oxalic acid, I didn't find very many mites in those hives. Very few.
Okay, I'm gonna real quick touch on this. This super. When you're putting supers together like this, I showed you, we've got these frames with just those little bar on top that they'll start on like that, or like that. And then we've got frames that say foundation that they're just starting to fill out and stuff that are not full frames. You don't want to take a super and just throw all these together and stick it in there. Generally, because they'll start making comb all different directions. So generally what I'll do is I'll start with one like this. Okay, it's got pretty good on this side, a little less on this side. But I'll just take and I'll throw that on that outside one. Then I'll find a comb that's full on both sides. Put that in. They call it checkerboarding. And then I'll take one of these, put that in. Then I'll try and find another full solid frame. It helps keep everything a little more even, keep your comb a little more even in your box, so you're not putting stuff like that all together.
It encourages them to build comb the way you want it, not the way they want it.
Yeah, because if you put 3 or 4 of these in there like this in a row, or 5 of them, they might have comb going across this direction or all different directions. I mean, so generally I try to have old comb, new foundation, old comb, new foundation. And we try to do that with our foundation, our brood chambers too. We'll try to do that if we're making more, get rid of a bunch of dirty, nasty comb, we're trying to make more. We'll go in there and we'll take the brood chamber apart, split the brood chamber and put a frame of new foundation in the middle of the brood chamber. Let them fill that out, and then maybe put one on the outside of the brood chamber, like 3 of them in a full hive, and let them fill those out to make us a new, good brood chamber comb.
There is evidence that some insecticides accumulate in the beeswax.
Right.
And they're starting to come to the conclusion that you should actually be cycling out your old comb to help eliminate those. And that's, I mean, they haven't come to definitive, this is the way it's supposed to be done. So, but that's something that I've looked at and read about, kind of go, well, okay, yeah.
What I did, just a little bit of background, I'll kind of get ahead of here. I'm Dale Hill, and if you read The Hive and the Honeybee in the nutrition section, you'll find my name. And if you use Dance AP 23, if you like it, I'm the guy that put it together. If you don't like it, somebody else did. But ADM owns the patent on it, so I get no royalties from it. But what I do with those is when I put a new foundation in, I take a pencil and mark the year on the wood, on the top of the frame. And I replace that foundation every 5 years.
Every 5, okay.
every
five,
5,
okay,
because it'll get dark like that, it'll almost get to black. Part of the reason for that is you've got, 4 or 5 cycles of bees through there, and each time you've got poop build up or cocoon build up within that cell, and you'll, like that one, and it'll get really dark, and the thought is that a lot of that is not only bee
Impurities.
poop, but pesticides. So I replace that foundation every 5 years. Usually you can keep the frame and reuse it, but replace the foundation every 5 years.
Yep.
I've built,
There is a use for these though.
yeah, I've actually built a solar wax collector. Have not used it yet because it isn't quite complete. So
It
you
works
can,
well.
so you can just lay the frames out and it'll melt and flow down.
Melts them off, flows down the
Yep.
bottom of it, and drips into the pan.
And I used the screen when I did that, so the wax would actually drip through the screen and
Yep.
catch a lot of that. And it works well, but you'll still get a lot of crud in the wax.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You have to
But
render
it works
down.
well.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, we could talk for 3 days about splits and still not cover it all. There's just so much to know. Is there anything in particular anybody wants to know about splits that we haven't talked about? Increase your numbers, basically.
If you want more hives and you have good strong
Yeah.
hives to start with.
If you have good bees that you like, and you want to maintain the bees you have, and you want more, you split them. Generally, you're going to lose some over the winter. It doesn't matter what you do. You're generally going to lose some over the winter. So you always want to split to your good hives that survive the winter and make the winter good. Your good hives, and if they're calm bees, you got to kind of figure everything in. They make good honey, whatever. You want to split that hive. You want to make more hives with that hive to get you. And then you build them up and get your honey off of them, and then you have more hives than you need before winter, so when you come out of winter, you're going to back down your numbers again. That's the reason to split, is to increase your numbers or maintain a certain amount of hives that you want.
It's also a lot cheaper than buying nukes for.
Oh, absolutely.
factory.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you really wanted to, you could extract 100% of the honey out of your colonies and everything else, and just let them die. And then replace them all in the spring.
Well, and a lot of
Not a cheap way to do it, and just bad.
but a lot of the commercial beekeepers will do that. They don't take all of their bees down to Florida or whatever. A lot of them, they take their good bees and their good yards or whatever. They don't worry about the one little hive. They go by the yard. If they got a bad hive, they kill that throughout the year or get rid of it or don't worry about it. But they'll take all their good yards back with them for splits or out to do the almonds or the oranges or whatever. They don't necessarily take all of their hives with them in the wintertime. A lot of them kill a bunch of hives. They'll extract everything out of the brood chambers, the whole works, they kill them and just put the boxes away, and then they go do their splits in the wintertime and they come back with new, better bees. I mean, I know we killed a lot of bees when I worked for the commercial guy down there. We only took about half of our bees down to split them for the year. So we killed a lot of bees. And at that time, that was way back in the day, we had one of them, it had a handle on it and that, a little can underneath it, with powder, you sprayed powder out, and we spray cyanide into the entrance of the hives. Spraying cyanide in them and kill them all, and then take the good hives down south. I mean, when you start doing commercial stuff like that, it's a whole different ballgame. But generally for us, I mean, we do splits and stuff to increase our numbers or maintain a good number and that. And so, but yeah, commercial guys do things a lot different.
Do you guys buying your queens like 100 at a time, or how are you doing it?
What's that?
You buying your queens 100 at a time?
No, we ordered 8 of them. We did.
For commercial.
Well, the commercial guys, they've got somebody right down there that makes the queens for them.
What I'm thinking is we ought to get, these guys all need queens in here in the spring, we ought to get together and order off like a whole bunch of queens instead of trying to order one.
Right, yeah.
And you get them for 25, if you order 50,
Right, yeah, and I think we ordered a dozen, because we did 3 for you and 8 for us, or whatever we ended up dealt with that time.
There's been one or two other times that, you know, would have bought queens and then sold ones or twos to other people,
Yeah,
just to help them out and give us all a better price.
well, yeah, and once because I screwed up, I made a stupid mistake. I went out there, we had a couple hives, I went out there, too deep, end of the winter, popped the lid, pulled a couple frames full of brood, great. I'm gonna have 6 frames of brood on the top, 6 frames of brood on the bottom. Not thinking, when your winter bee's over, a lot of times the bees end up in that top box in the spring, and they don't like to go down. The queen always likes to go up. So if your winter bee's over and they make it through the winter, a lot of times what I do is I pop them apart and I put the top box on the bottom, put the bottom box on the top, because they'll be in that top box and she does not like to go down as much as she likes to go up. So if you do make it through the winter and the spring, when you go through your first hive inspection, make sure you check both boxes. If they're all in the top, move the top to the bottom, put the bottom on top.
In this case that he's talking about, the top box had the 6 frames, the bottom box had nothing.
Plumb empty. So I ordered all these queens, thinking I want to make all these splits, not thinking, just a brain fart. You know, I knew better, but I just wasn't thinking. And
Old age.
yeah, well, that too.
Wait a minute, I'm older than you are.
Yeah.
Forget that remark.
So yeah, I mean, there's yeah, we can go on that forever. Any other questions or any other comments you can think of on doing splits?
You talked earlier about a queen extruder. Some people love them, some hate them. You talked about the advantage of using it. Is there any advantage of not using it, or is there a reason?
Most of the people who don't like queen excluders, the worker bees fit through the opening, the queen bee doesn't. But when those worker bees go through that opening, they're brushing their wings against the side of it. They're squeezing their way through. And a lot of guys think that takes the lifespan, reduces the lifespan of the worker bees and makes them have to work harder to do the same amount of work.
On the commercial side, do they use excluders typically?
No, we never did.
Never.
Not the guy I work for.
On the commercial side,
Yeah, we never used any
we use
excluders.
them all the time.
Really?
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, see, the guy I work for,
it's
we
both
never.
ways.
Wait, which one of these companies is still in business?
Well,
That'll be the
the
answer.
one I used to work for is owned by Addie now.
All right.
So,
Which,
yeah.
You know, we commented about the different styles of the queen excluders. There's 2 things I want to mention. Is one, all bees aren't the same size.
Right.
You'll get certain, you know, strains of bees that are bigger bee, other ones are smaller bees. Then the other thing is, the plastic ones, if you put this in the freezer, because they'll put wax on and you'll get all kinds of gunk on them. You put this in the freezer in a garbage bag and then just flex it a little bit, everything just flakes off. So it's clean as a whistle. Those are a lot harder.
here's a hack for you, too. I know, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
For the plastic ones.
Because I've actually had to use a torch.
Oh, yeah, you belt these off?
You get that off in there.
I've done that too. But yes, there is, actually, I seen a hive last week that kind of baffled me, and I don't know, but those bees were actually very large. That one hive, he had 6 or 7 hives there. That one hive, the bees, the actual worker bees were actually very large. And I don't know that they would have went through one of these. But at the same time, we use top entrances too, where when I was working commercial, they just had a flat piece of plywood with 2 boards on the top, slapped it on top, nailed it down. There was no top entrance in them hives. So the bees all had to go in the bottom and up. We use the top entrance so they can get in.
This is a little fancier version. These actually have a little cleat on the side. But yeah, the commercial ones are just plain simple.
Yep, they don't have that inner cover, they don't have the lip over the edges. I mean, maybe they do, some of them, but when the ones I worked on, they didn't do that. So they had to all go through the bottom, so they would have had to go all the way through the entire hive, through the excluder to get up to drop the nectar off, turn the extruder, get back out, to go back out and get more, you know, ours can go up and down, out through the, in and out through the top, and they do a lot through the top. And both ends of our tops are open all summer long, and they're in and out both ends of it all the time. They use the top of it all the time.
For the Varroa mite control, one of the things that people are doing is they deliberately put in drone comb because the Varroa mites will go for a larger cell. Gives them more room.
Yeah,
So,
they like drone comb better.
right, so there is a growing thought that we will use foundation that they do a smaller honeycomb, and the mites don't like it as well at all. And they figured that this is one of the ways to, you know, encourage the bees to control the mites for themselves.
And Teresa was actually gonna bring some drone combs in that she uses for mite control and has very good results.
And what
I don't really have any frames here that I can even use for an example, because none of these have drone comb in them.
And again, you pop the comb in there, you let them fill it full and cap them, then you take them out, throw them in the freezer overnight,
Yep,
scuff the caps,
so
drop them back in, and then
now we're getting into the next part.
then the bees will clean out the dead drones, and then they'll reuse it.
And if you put drone comb in there, she's gonna lay drone eggs in there. You know, unfertilized eggs makes a drone. If it's drone comb, that's what she's gonna lay in it. And if it's good comb, that's what she's gonna lay in it.
You could buy the drone frames and they're
Yep,
green.
absolutely. Yep, they're made just like, you know, they come in and they look just like one of these, like this, full, but it's all drone comb. It's bigger, larger cells.
It's like 6 millimeter.
And they,
7 millimeter,
yeah.
8 millimeter, just
And they like, the Varroa mite like those better. So,
I want to add one thing about your queen extractors. When I took them classes that time, they brought some guest speakers in that had bees quite a while. One of them experimented between the plastic extruder and the metal extruder, and he claims the bees can get through the metal better because it doesn't have edges. And he claimed that they were more productive for getting honey into the supers through the metal versus the plastic.
one of the other things is, though, on that same note, this plastic's got edges.
Yeah.
So when that bee crawls through there, it knocks that mite off. They do say that it helps with mite control. That's one of the things they talk about with mite control. But there again, it depends on the size of your bees and what they're going through. But with the sharp edges, they say it does actually knock the mites off the bee when they're going through it. One of those things. But anyway, we're going to get to mite control. Anything else? Any other questions on splits? I'd say the main thing to do to remember: splits, nukes, bees, packages. The packages, the nukes, feed them, feed them, feed them. When you're setting up your box, though, you want the 2 outside frames. You want to try and get some honey, capped honey in them, some food for them. The next frames in, you kind of like to get some pollen in there if you can. If you can, you can't always do it. They'll bring their own pollen in, but it's better to have pollen for them. And then inside that, you want some decent comb for her to start laying in right away. If you have it. If you don't, they'll make it. It just holds them back a little. They need a little more food. They need a little more of everything. So, if you're going to do splits, you want to make sure they have at least 2 good frames of cat brood, period. Eggs, larva, cat brood. You want 2 good full frames of it, or it's not even worth wasting your time to do a split. If you just put 1 in there, your chances drastically go down of that thing surviving even. It really makes a huge difference. So that was always our general rule. I'm sure there's other opinions, but that was always our general rule, is they had to have 2 good solid frames full of anywhere from eggs to cat brood or the ones worth putting a split in. They weren't worth wasting a queen on, so.
One of the things Don hasn't mentioned is, there is yet another way to accumulate your bees.
Yeah, I know, I'm gonna touch on that after we get done with this part.
Oh, well, I just,
You're jumping ahead of me again.
as long as you're talking about making more colonies, I
Right,
just.
yep, we're gonna get to that right here real quick. Okay, any other questions on splitting or putting in packages or putting in nukes? Okay, we're gonna kind of jump off of this, get away from this, and just a quick touch on queen traps or
Swarm traps.
swarm traps. This is generally the time of year you start getting the swarms. What I've got, I just got some old nuke boxes that were just, they're trash. They're just plywood thrown together. They worked for what they needed them for. They got us our bees and stuff. But anyway, I took a couple of those. I don't fill them up. Old, nasty, smelly comb. Just throw a couple frames in the bottom. Leave the empty space. So don't bother. They'll fill that full of burr comb if they want to. Whatever. Doesn't make any difference. Still got a couple frames to get some good stuff. And then on top again the same thing. Old, nasty frames. If you walk by, you come up here and look at this.
Smell.
Or whatever, you'll smell it as soon as you'll smell it before you can even get a good look at it.
To the bees, it smells like home.
It gives them, yes, it draws them in. The bees are, if that hive's even thinking about swarming, they've already sent out scouts to look for a place to go. And those scouts can smell that for a long ways away. And then on top of that, we have different swarm lures. There's little ones here. This is just a little squaze water bottle. I kind of like this one. It's cheat tree oil?
No, it's
Lemongrass?
lemongrass and spearmint.
Yeah. Yep. And what I do is, I've already got the nasty old comb in there. I would take and spray the top of that frame. I wouldn't do the bottom ones inside here. I just spray on the top here, and then I spray across the entrance, and that's what I do with those. Those are in a plastic sealed container.
And these are actually a pheromone that will attract the bees.
Yep. And you just don't break that open, you just take that out, put it in the hive, and it starts emitting the odor. And that lasts for a long time. This, you should do that about once a month. If you haven't caught anything, spray it again, just to keep gives them a little extra to look forward to. But I don't want to get into this too much, but this is what I do. And I like to put one on top of the other, make it too deep. They tend to like that taller than they do, because I've got one at home that's like this, just one box, and I've got one that's double, and every year I catch a swarm in that double box.
So you catch them off your own though, or you catch them off somebody else?
No, I don't have any bees at my house.
Okay.
There's somebody else's bees that I catch every year.
What's that saying? That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
There's a major bee company, 4 blocks from your place?
So that's not easy.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, so he's,
So my question is, you don't want to put I guess my comment, you don't want to put those in your own bee hive.
You can
You're not
put
gonna
these
your
to
own. You're not
catch,
gonna your own.
you can put these out to catch your own swarms if you're one of your swarms. But there again, they don't recommend putting them less than 300 yards away. If they're within, the bees want to get away. They don't want to come out this door and go right into a new one. They want to get away, so they say to put them at least 300 yards away from the existing hive.
Which was I was trying to get to, you want to take those away to somebody else's
Yep,
place, away
yep.
a long ways from yours, so you're not catching your own bees, you're not
Yep.
catching somebody else's bees.
Right, yeah, but either way. And then the other thing is, I have it's a shed in my backyard now, but it's a truck box. It's 8 foot wide, 20 foot long, 8 foot tall, roll-up door in the back. It's in my yard. I put siding on it. Looks like a shed. But I put it on top of that. It's just got the flat roof. I set it up on top of that, so it's 8 feet up in the air is where I keep my swarm traps.
and again, that's what the bees like.
That's what they recommend, is putting them up higher. They say 10 feet minimum, but that's getting up 10 feet to mess with bees and
Find a
hives.
tree and get a camouflage box, and just stick it in the tree and see what happens,
Yeah,
that's what I did.
yeah.
Tree stands for deer hunters work real well.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
hadn't thought of that.
Well, you gotta remember that you gotta get that thing down at some point. You're gonna have bees moving into this at some point. So you're gonna have the weight of the bees and the weight of the comb and the weight of the honey they're putting in there. You're gonna have to get this down at some point. So don't get it too far up where you can't handle it easily. Because you don't wanna grab it and drop it 8 feet down to the ground on your way down.
That's a bobcat before.
Yep, well, my bobcat don't go that high. Mine's a little one, so. But that's just a swarm trap. That's where you can use up some of your old nasty comb, is in the swarm trap. Then when you put this into a regular hive, you put some of your nasty comb in there, but you put it out to the outside edge a little more, put some nicer comb inside, then when that stuff hatches out, you get it out of there. As much, you know, you work your way to get it out of there as much as you can. But yeah, so, and like I say, I've caught a swarm every year down there where I live. So, yep. But that's kind of, I mean, the gist of that's what we do for swarm traps. There's so many different ways to do it, but that's what we do. We just got some junk nuke boxes that we tack together and make them fit together, throw some old comb in there, spray some stuff on them, and it's all good. Okay,
Mite.
that was supposed to be quick.
Yeah,
Mite right now.
mites.
Yeah, now we're gonna move to mites.
We've already
We're
talked,
gonna cover a couple different things. First of all, what we need to discuss is how to check for mite numbers. How to check your mite numbers. Okay, and if you don't, you got pen and paper, a couple things wrote down that I know, so I don't think about it all the time. What we use, okay, I've got jars here with different, no, this lid's not supposed to be on here, but that's for a feeder. This is the other lid that he was complaining the holes were too big. I've got 3 different ones here.
for a feeder, they're way too big.
So what these are, and it doesn't matter the size of the jar, but these are to check for mite numbers. What we do is the less aggressive one. I'll cover the more aggressive one first. We don't do it. Some people do. This is alcohol in this jar. Okay? When testing for mites, you grab a big container and you start grabbing the bees and you count out 300 bees and you test those 300 bees. You use 300 bees is the number that they figure, okay? A half a cup holder, okay, half a cup. Shake some bees into a big container, take your cup dipper, dip a half a cup out, put them in the jar. Okay, put the bees in this jar of alcohol, shake it up, they're dead, but it takes the mites off of them. Then you can just go like this and you can see how many mites you got and how much trouble you have. But your bees are dead, you killed all your bees, and I don't like that, but it does work. And a general rule is 300 bees to do a test. So 300 bees is basically a half a cup of bees. And the number...
The big problem with this one too is you can't drink the alcohol out of it.
Right.
So you don't use Jack Daniels?
No.
Unless you do it kind of tin.
Well,
You could. I mean,
this actually has a little bit of color to it. That's because the lid is starting to rust. But there's a reason that this is pure white, no color, no nothing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Otherwise known as white might.
Yeah. And that's what most people use, but he has this sitting out in the shed for some reason. I don't know why. Don't ask.
Let's just say that I have,
Access.
we'll call it industrial solvent alcohol. Lovingly manufactured.
Okay. So, back on topic. We got 300 bees you're going to test. Half a cup of bees, 300 bees you're going to test. Okay? The number that says you need to start treating, which you should automatically start treating even if you have one. But the number saying that it's time to start treating is if you get 3 mites. If you see 3 mites, on your plate, that means that you need to start treating. That's their general rule number, okay? So what you're gonna use is powdered sugar. You're gonna take that half a cup of bees and you're gonna put powdered sugar in there and you're gonna shake them up, shake it up, and that powdered sugar basically knocks the mites loose, okay? And then you take a paper plate, a white paper plate, and you shake it like a salt shaker or a pepper shaker, and shake all that powder out, and then you can see how many mites you have on that paper plate. And if there's more than 3 mites, you have to treat. This is one that I made. I just drilled 1/8-inch holes. You could go a little bigger if you wanted to, just so the hole's bigger. Small enough the bees don't come out when you shake it. That's all you need. You want it big enough that the mites can come out, or you can use a piece of screen. And this screen is too small, but I just threw it on there just so I can kind of give you an idea but you got to use a little bit bigger mesh screen. I think it's 1/8 inch, is it? I don't know the screen numbers.
1/8 inch.
I don't know the mesh numbers, but it's like an 1/8 inch opening. So this is too fine, they won't fit through. But basically you take them 300 bees with that powdered sugar, you shake it onto a white paper plate, and if you see more than 3 mites, and you'll see them on that white powdered sugar, then you need to be treating.
So with the powdered sugar, the bees are still alive?
Yes, then you just take and dump the bees back in the hive. Yep, absolutely. And powdered sugar is actually one of the forms of mite treatment. If you have a screen bottom, it knocks the mites off the bees. Problem with it is...
It also encourages them to groom, which then they find them and then they get
Right.
knocked off.
However, the problem with it is it doesn't kill the mite. So the mite falls down, falls through your screen bottom on the ground, crawls back up, can crawl back into the hive. I mean, they can pick it back up. That's the problem. But it does work to knock the mites off. If you have a screen bottom board, what a lot of them do with a screen bottom board, they can do the powdered sugar. They do that powdered sugar over the bees, and after they put the powdered sugar in the hive, then they slide a piece of sticky, like contact paper, in on top of their screen, and then the mites fall down through the screen onto that. They're stuck there, they die. That's the only way in my opinion, that's the only feasible way to do it with the powdered sugar method.
There is discussions too that you shouldn't use normal powdered sugar. Normal powdered sugar isn't pure sugar, it contains some starch. So instead they say, well, no, you're supposed to find the pure powdered sugar.
Yeah, or
Which
organic.
Yes, organic, and
Yeah.
I don't know that it's a big deal. You know,
The other thing on that too, side note of that is, generally, when I said you take a frame out and you shake the bees into there, what you want to get are the nurse bees. The nurse bees are going to give you the most accurate count. You want to take a frame that's got brood and nurse bees on it, shake that into your container, and use the nurse bees to do your test.
So you want to check during the day when the field bees are out.
Right, yeah. But when you shake it off, if there's field bees on that frame, when you shake it into a container, they're going to probably fly. The nurse bees will be walking around the bottom of the container. They don't fly as easily. You got to be kind of quick and get them and put them in there before they do fly away. But the nurse bees will be the last ones to fly away. The field bees will be gone as soon as you dump it in there.
And don't
So you
do
want
that with the frame where your queen is.
Well, and there's another very good point. And I don't think about that because that's automatic. Goes back to just what I said before, you always want to try and find your queen. Before you shake that brood frame off to do your test, make sure the queen is not on that frame. Because you really don't want to put your queen in a jar and shake the hell out of it. You're not going to be happy, it's probably not going to work for you.
exactly.
Yeah, especially if it's the alcohol one. I don't like the alcohol one. I mean, I don't see any reason to have to kill the bees to do a test. The powdered sugar one, you shake them up a little bit, they're not happy with it, but they're not dead. So that's my opinion, that's where it is. Okay, there's several different ones out there. I'm gonna touch on a few. Everybody's probably heard of the Mite strips that you lay on the top of your frames. I've never used them, so I'm gonna tell you what I have read about them, what I know about them. Maybe you've used them, I don't know. You wanna use gloves, they're formic acid is what they are. You wanna use gloves, you peel them open, you put a couple of them on top of the frame, read the instructions that comes with them, you put them on top, put your box on there, and you leave them on for a week, week and a half, whatever. I don't think there's a time limit for leaving them on. Is there on that?
42 days.
Is it on the Mite Away? Okay. 42 days, he said. You don't want to put them on any longer
However,
than that.
With that said, there's a lot of people leaving in all winter.
Right, and I found that too with the Mite Away. The other thing with the Mite Away strips, you don't want to use the Mite Away strips if it's going to be over 93 degrees for that week or the next few days. That you don't want to use them in that high temperature days. Their number's 93 degrees. I mean, that's, there again, just the number they picked out. You don't want to use them on really hot days. It's gonna
You
be
don't
really
want
hot
to use
the next
any
few
of the
days.
sides on the, when it's going to be real hot like that, because if it doesn't, it may kill the mites, but it's, I really question if it's going to affect the reproductive efficiency of the queen
Exactly.
at the higher temperatures. So
Yep.
kind of watch the forecast and make sure you're using all those when it's in the 70s and 80s, not in the 90s.
And if your temperatures are really, lower in the 50s, then the Mite Away strips don't seem to work very
They
good.
don't work as well. It's not going to harm the bees, but they don't work as well. But they say when it gets over that 93 degrees is what they're saying. They say when it gets over that, then it actually harms the brood, or reduces the brood number, or harms the brood. It affects the brood. You lose brood. So you don't want to do it when it's really, really hot. You want to use gloves because it is a chemical. It's a natural chemical, and it's a chemical. And you want to put it on there. And 43 days, I didn't see that, but I've never used them, so I've never read the instructions on them. So I'm just kind of glazing over this. Another one is Apivar. They're strips that you actually hang down in between the frames. They hang down in between the frames. You cannot use the Apivar with honey supers. If you've got honey supers on there, you can't take the honey supers on, put the Apivar strip in, put the honey supers back on. It's not recommended. You can't do it. And you cannot leave them in over the winter. There's 54 days on those, is what it says. Is the maximum for putting those in.
And really, you don't want to put your supers back on. Don't do your mite treatment until you harvested your honey, and you're not going to be putting supers back on. We don't want to take the chance of contaminating our honey with pesticides.
Yep, especially this Apivar. They said, now the Mite Away they're saying is safe with the honey production. I still wouldn't want to put chemicals in there and do that, but, and the same with the Apivar. They said not to do that with honey. They don't use those if you have honey supers on. That's about all I know about it. I mean, you can get online, you can read all you want about them, you can watch YouTube videos about them. They can explain it a lot better than I can.
But follow directions.
Yes, follow directions. They're very specific. If you don't follow the directions, you don't put in the right amount. If you put in, it's kind of like antibiotics. We've got this stuff that's getting strains of antibiotics that are getting, or strains that are antibiotic resistant. Supposedly it's from not finishing all your antibiotics when you get a prescription. You start feeling better, so you just quit taking them, and then whatever's still in your system builds up an immunity to it, okay? They're saying the same thing with these strips, the Apivar or the Mite Away. You don't want to leave them in there past the certain amount of days. Says 54 for the apivar. So you don't wanna put it on, pull your honey out, put them in there, but don't leave them in there all winter long. That's what they're saying. Because the mites are getting immune to them. They're building an immunity to them because they're being left on too long.
And do you treat only in the fall?
That's a good question. You should treat in the spring, and you should very, very much treat in the fall before they go through winter. You want to get rid of them as much as you can before they overwinter, because that's hard on the bees.
So what do you use in the spring then?
We don't use any of the strips. We use oxalic acid.
Okay.
You measure
A
out
little powder, there's, what is there,
six.
There's 6 treatments here for 6 different hives in this little bottle here. It's got 6 little capsules full of the oxalic acid.
I go through and pre-measure them out, so you don't have to mess with it.
Yeah. Or you can just take the can out there with you and a little scooper and scoop it in every time. And you scoop it into this little tray right here. Okay. This, Joel just uses his riding lawnmower. He takes his riding lawnmower out there and he can drive around the yard with it, hook this up to the battery on the riding lawnmower. It's got 2 alligator clips. You put the powder in here, come around, shove this inside the hive, about to there, it's all to the handle here, okay? And then you put a rag over the front entrance. You hook that up to the battery. It takes, what, about a minute? About a minute and a half. And it just fumes the whole hive, and it'll start rolling out the top and stuff. And you can pull this back out, and you might burn a bee or two, but
Do not inhale this. This is nasty.
Stay up
Long.
They call that wood bleach too, right?
yep, that's exactly what it
You
is.
get it right now at the hardware store, wood bleach.
Yep, it's oxalic acid, doing large.
The
Yep,
using wood bleach for treatment of mites is illegal.
Oh, really?
It is. However, it's the most common one that people use. The reason for that, this gets even better.
Yeah.
You have to use the approved, I don't know what the brand is, it's, I don't know, 5 times more expensive. It is the exact same chemical compound.
it's pure
Exact.
oxalic acid.
Yep.
There's nothing else added to it.
It's oxalic acid dihydrogenase. That's the magic, that's what it is. Now, it gets better. If you've bought any of the official, you have to take the honey supers off when you treat, okay? However, they have now changed the rules. You do not need to do that, okay? They have determined that the naturally occurring oxalic acid, they haven't been able to detect any increase, significant, in the honey when you use it for treatments, okay? So you think, oh great, I can use my bottle of oxalic acid and treat with the honey supers on. That's illegal. You have to buy a new bottle that has the little thing on there that, yes, you can use it with the honey
It says
supers on.
it's still the same stuff.
It's the exact same thing. However, they have this thing on there. It is illegal to use this, I can't remember the proper terminology, but to use this not following the label, or the label,
Yeah.
okay? So it's the exact same thing. It's our government report, okay?
Can I say one more thing about the mic tank?
Yeah.
You're talking about, once you can put oxalic acid, you can actually use that with the.
With supers on, they're
I
saying.
think Hot Guard, which is made with nicotine, you do the same thing. Actually,
Yeah, see, I don't know
Yeah,
anything
it's
about
actually
that
one
one.
where you use Hot Guard too.
I'm not familiar with that at all.
But that's just, whatever, you can look, like I said, you can look it up, you can whatever, but I've actually used Hot Guard for just that, what it is.
There is a new way to apply oxalic acid. The applicator is much more expensive, but basically you mix up either water and, interestingly enough, they specify using wood bleach, but you mix it with water or mix it with alcohol. And I think they also said mineral oil, which to me was a bad idea. But you mix it up as a solution, and it's a propane fogger.
the same fogger that you put chemicals in to spray for mosquitoes or
Yeah, right.
whatnot.
It's-
Oh, you're doing it with acrylic acid, so instead of doing this to each hive, you can just go along with this thing, give it a couple squirts,
Yep.
or the next one, a couple squirts, and you can do a lot of them quickly.
I got one better than that. There's a guy down in Nebraska that actually did this, as a extra good that I got it from. You do that, you use glycerin, basically some alcohol, you basically just, get rid of it makes a solution, and then you use like paper towels, you got a paper towel, you put it on, and then you just put that on top of the hive, and when they drag that paper towel off, they get the oxalic acid on, or whatever, and it kills it, and it works. But they use the glycerin because it's a little bit oily, so it sticks to the bee type thing. Now, it might be like any other of this stuff, a little bit harder than the bees, so you gotta kind of watch what you're doing, but it works. They've been doing it, this guy in Nebraska, I think his name right now, is doing it forever, and I've been doing it for a couple of years. But it's the same thing, it's not oxalic acid, it's not caustic.
Yep.
Is that?
Can I Google the?
Yeah. You can Google it.
Check the
Yeah,
state
oxalic-
regulations before you do that.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
yeah. It's just like you're saying, it's the same thing with oxalic, it's the same,
Or don't ask, don't tell, what's that?
Well, yeah.
This, yeah, I don't remember, what was this, like 80 bucks?
Yeah, something like that.
They sell them all over, but
Yep.
when I got mine, I tested it first to see how long it would take to vaporize the oxalic acid on the thing, and you put a different amount of oxalic acid based on if you have 1 deep or 2 deeps. You go a little heavier if you got 2 deeps. I just take a wet towel, plug the bottom, take a piece of duct tape over the top entrance, slide it in there, 10 minutes, move to the next hive. I use my garden tractor, works perfect.
Yeah.
Within an hour, I can do all the hives, just so.
Yeah, it don't take that
No.
terrible long.
And then-
If you only got a few hives.
Yeah.
But what he's talking about is if
Yeah.
you got 60 or 80 hives, you can use that fogger and just zip around there and do it all. Not have to drag a battery with you or another vehicle. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different mite treatments. Here's another one that supposedly works really well, and it's all natural, but I'm not gonna try it. If somebody wants to, I got the numbers here and stuff. It's, you take food grade, which is organic coconut oil. Yeah, 4 ounces of coconut oil, 1 drop of thyme oil. And then you mix it up really, really well. You soak it up with gauze pads, squeeze the gauze pads out, so if the chemical's in there, but it's not wet. Because if it's wet, it drips on the bees and kills them. And then you just lay the pads on top, same thing. It's kind of like the other strips and stuff. But on that same note, that lady that I watched a video on it because I heard about it, she said 4 ounces coconut oil, 1 drop of thyme oil. Any more than that will start killing bees. So it's kind of, it's really particular. I mean, if anybody wants it, it's 4 ounces of coconut oil, 1 drop of thyme oil.
So that would be the same active ingredient actually as Avogard.
Pretty much,
Fine.
yes. But if you put 2 drops of
Yeah,
thyme
a little bit
oil
is good,
goes in
too much is
there,
deadly.
you better put 4 more ounces of coconut oil. As they said, it's really, she's done it, and she said it's really particular. You have to mix it just right. You have to mix it very well. There again, I've never used it. I'm probably never going to use it. I like what we do with oxalic acid. Getting back to oxalic acid, once a week for 4 weeks. Some people say even more.
There is discussions about oxalic acid because it only treats the bees and kills the mites that are not in the cell. The problem then is you treat it, you have bee larvae that are being cast. It doesn't kill the mites. Once the bee comes out, breaks the cap, comes out, the mites that are in that cell are then basically free roaming for 3 to 5, some people say a little longer, but 3 to 5 days. Then they find a cell and go in and you know, get capped and sealed away again. So there are people that say be real aggressive, treat every 3 days. Okay?
For 3 weeks. For the
Well,
full cycle.
three or 4, yes.
Yeah, for the full cycle of the brood. And actually, yeah, because it's 3 weeks, 21 days for worker bees. It's actually a little longer for drone, right?
Right, but
The drones are the ones that they really like to go in as a drone comb.
But it's,
So you want to-
but it's not the full cycle, it's only the time that they are capped.
Right, right.
And a worker bee is in a capped cell for about 12 days.
So,
That's where if you do it every 3 days. The other thing is when you vaporize it or fog them, that wafts up through the hive and forms crystals everywhere. Well, they say that you actually have about a 3-day residual effect. As the bees are cleaning that up, it gets dropped or knocked down. Okay? And that's one of the reasons why they say, well, no, if you treat every, 5 days, you get everything then, and then over the next 3 days, you're getting everything else that has, come out of the cells. So, yeah, it's kind of like nobody quite, they can't even actually definitively tell you how oxalic acid kills the mites.
Right.
Some people say, well, it forms little crystals and it basically suffocates them. But there's also evidence that them walking on the crystals is enough to kill them.
it cuts their exoskeleton.
It either cuts up the exoskeleton and they dehydrate, or they absorb it through their feet. They don't know. But it works. And varroa mites have not shown any adaptation to oxalic acid. Okay? None whatsoever. Yet.
I wanted to say one more thing I forgot on them. On the Mite away strips, when you use the Mite away strips, if you're using a screened bottom board, you need to block that screen bottom board off. Because the chemical on the Mite away strips can fall down through and drop out the bottom of the hive. They want to keep that chemical in the hive for as long as you can. So if you're going to use the strips and you have a screen bottom board, you want to cover that bottom board up so that they that everything can't fall out.
Is anybody doing the integrated pest management systems?
Yeah.
You are? Oh, okay.
I'm not that organized.
It seems like it's a big hassle to do. It sounds like it's effective, but because it takes so much time and everything else, you have a much better idea of what your mite loads are and everything else, but
Knowledge is power, right? It's getting the knowledge, taking the time to get it,
there are people that actually take their hives and they actually set them on 4 sensors so they can tell you what the weight is, literally minute to minute.
They have devices now out there that you can put with your cell phone. You can stick the device that actually gives you your cell phone as far as the heat and temperature and everything else inside the hive.
Yep.
Actually measured on here. And there's another one that they just came out with that, I can't think exactly. It's got the same idea. It actually goes off the noise of the bee. When you're talking about the noise of the bees out when they actually have that figured out how the bees sound inside the hive.
Yep.
You can actually tell what's going on inside the hive.
Yep.
All you gotta do is look inside of it. It's just crazy stuff.
That's actually still in development.
Yeah.
It's through the University of Montana, and I'm involved with that a little bit.
Yeah.
So they're looking for citizen scientists to do that recording, but also at the same time do a mite count and do a health inspection on the bees, and then send all that to the University of Montana so they can help calibrate that and make it more accurate.
Which goes back to your IBM.
Exactly.
It's got IBM and everything, whether it's
Exactly.
plants or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to cover one thing really quick. We talked about mites. I mean, we could talk all day and all night and for weeks about them, but We don't have a huge problem with them up here, but they do sometimes come up in the nukes. Beetles.
Small hive beetles.
Yes, I've got two different traps here for beetles. This is, if you can see through, it's plastic, thick stuff. It's the stuff they make the
Political
election
signs.
signs out of and stuff.
Plastic
It's
corrugated
like tube,
cardboard.
like little straws, like an accordion or a harmonica. Okay, you can take these and you take Crisco oil and you plug off one end, you fill, you dump inside the other end, you dump, now I've been talking about oxalic acid for so long I forgot, boric acid. You put boric acid in there and then you put the Crisco on this end too. And you just lay this in the bottom of the hive and they'll go in there and they'll eat on the Crisco and then they get in there and that boric acid cuts their exoskeleton up and it helps kill beetles. I've also got this, it looks like a floor drain out of somebody's shop. It's got all the little holes in it. It's a plastic container, fits down in between two frames. You put cooking oil, about a third of the way up in it, fill it full of cooking oil. You just open up your bottom box and you slide it in between a couple frames, put it back together. The beetles crawl around on it, they crawl down in there and get the cooking oil, they can't come back out.
Or they get chased by bees.
Or the bees
And
chase them and
they'll
they
be
go
looking for
hide.
a place to hide.
Yep. So, just real quick, I mean, I don't know that we've ever had a problem with them. I've never really seen them in our hives, so I've never treated for them, but I got these just in case, and I might throw them in a couple hives and see what happens. But there's a couple ways just for treating for beetles, if you have beetles.
They're sneaky, those.
Oh yeah, I've watched some, there again, I've watched videos of them and they disappear really quickly. So, yeah, we might have them not know it. But I mean, you get down south and they've got them, they're just everywhere. Just like ants crawling all over in the hives. I mean, so they may come up with your nukes. You gotta, you want to inspect your nukes when you're putting them into your frames. And we're gonna treat ours right away with the oxalic acid and get everything treated. And just keep treating them for the next 4 or 5 weeks. That wasn't you saying somebody down south here, they just treat once a week all summer long.
Where I
They
got
never
my,
stop.
where I got my queens this year from Queen Bee Acres, there from Nancy Brother. In fact, she's gonna speak at one of the meetings here. They treat with oxalic acid weekly but she's
All summer long.
all
Yep,
summer
they
long,
never
but
stop.
she's got one of those vaporizers.
Yeah.
Yep.
They just go from hive to hive.
And she puts that
She uses
boric stuff for the beetles.
Yep.
She puts it in a CD case and just
Slides
lays
it
it on the bottom.
Yes, CD cases work too.
You just
Big
sprinkle
CD
some
case.
in there
Yep.
and she lays it in the bottom of the hive.
Yep. And they'll crawl in there to hide or whatever and
The boric acid, by the way, is readily available as a roach killer.
yep.
That's the dry powder roach killer. You look at it, it's boric acid.
Well, I just moved up here from west central Illinois about a year ago, and we had hive beetles there. And we used those beetle traps. You can either use vegetable oil, or you can use vinegar.
Oh,
That works as
okay.
pretty well as an attractant, and they'll drown the net. The other thing we did is we took unscented Swiffer pads, quartered them, and put 2 in a hive. And that, you can tell real quick whether you've got those, because it's just like Velcro for those.
Yeah.
Those
They're-
critters. And
It's
they-
gotta be
Does
unscented.
the
It's gotta
mites
be
show,
unscented.
do the mites show up on that too?
Say again,
Does the mites show up on that then too?
the bees will chase them onto that.
The mites and the beetles?
For the mites,
both?
no, not for all.
Just the beetles?
Just the beetles.
There is people that use a particular brawny brand paper towel that they will put in the hive. And basically, you put a chunk of that in the hive, the bees will gnaw on it, chew on it, make a big fluffy mess. But hive beetles have like little spines and stuff on their legs. They get tangled in. So apparently, it's quite effective.
You'll be able to tell real quick.
The Swiffer pads are wonderful for catching them.
Yeah, the Swiffer pads would probably be one step above. You have the
And then if there's any live, I just take those and put them in my smoker and put new pads in.
Yeah.
And the sheets that you're talking about are like, that's exactly what I know the sheets you're talking about, they're like, the blue ones you get like
Yeah.
camels on the lawnmower, the blue, the little thick one is
Yep,
what we use.
yep, it's the, I think it is the blue brawny industrial, and I don't remember what they specifically call it, but yeah.
All right, I think we're,
Any other questions,
nobody
anybody?
else got any questions, we'll let him talk for a while.
Well,
If anybody does, I mean,
Yeah,
I know Marcella and I had some contact back and forth, she was looking for South Castle. And so my phone number may have gotten out there, but please don't call until after 4 p.m.
He works all night.
I work nights, I generally don't wake up until 4 p.m. So,
Yep.
but after that, yeah, if you wanna call me 2 o'clock at night, no problem.
Then we get done here, if you guys want to come up and look at stuff and actually take stuff apart and ask questions or whatever, I'll stick around a while. I'm not in a hurry to get out of here, so.
you guys, thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. Now, there's a couple things I want to go over here. We're kind of running a little long on time. Dale's scheduled to speak next week on nutrition, or next month on nutrition on June 26th. Do I have that right here?
And then again in September.
And then September again on winterizing bees. Okay? I'm going to kind of go over the agenda real quick. We've got Dale speaking on nutrition on June 26th. On July 24th, I got Darren Roosh. He's going to be talking on bee pasture and how to, what you can do to create a friendlier bee environment. I've also got a bunch of literature here for anybody who wants to pick it up, take it home. It's free for taking. August 21st, we have a gal coming, and now she's never did this before. I picked up queens from her, and she does an alternative way, I thought it was alternative way, on how she raises her bees, and I was really impressed. It was the first time, I want to show you this, it was the first time I've ever seen firsthand. She opened up some frames, just cold turkey, pulled them out full of bees, and she could pet that queen. And none of us had masks on, none of us had suits on, nothing. And I was able to stick my hand down between those frames. Not one bee bite. Those bees were that tame. I was really impressed. And she's going to come up here and speak. August 21st meeting, she's going to give a presentation on how she does it. Her methods. She's also got the contract to sell nukes for the bomb guards next year. Then on September 21st or 25th, Dale's going to be here to talk about winterizing bees. And on October 23rd will be our last meeting of the season before winter. And Teresa and Robert are going to talk about honeybee extract or honey extraction. And then we're also going to have a presentation on wax, uses of wax. We're speakers on, it hasn't been decided yet, so we got to figure that one out. Dale is a guest here today, and I was going to ask him to speak, but he's scheduled for next week. Dale, do you want to add anything that was shared here today?
The only, I've already mentioned a couple of things that I'm a PhD animal nutritionist. I developed the AP23 while I was working with ADM. I'm retired. Just moved up here about a year ago, right in the middle of COVID, so it was great traveling because there was nobody on the road. But what else? I've had bees for about 15 years. I ended up selling those bees when I moved up here. We went from 5 acres to about 1/4 of an acre, and I screwed up my shoulder lifting those heavy boxes. So there's two kinds of beekeepers, those with bad backs, those that are going to get bad backs. So I did it with my shoulder. And then I also teach the nutrition section of the Master Beekeeper course through University of Montana. So I'll be here for next month to talk to you guys about nutrition.
Dale, thank you. Thank you for your feedback too today. I really appreciate it. It's nice to have guests here that have experience and knowledge in the field, and I'm a newcomer, so
So it really helps us. I had something else I was gonna share too.
Teresa.
Yeah, Teresa gets her, any of you who bought nukes from Teresa, her bees come in Monday, late Monday afternoon. And you can pick them up. She just called, she couldn't make it today, so they will be in then to pass the word on. Since we're kind of running a little
Long.
close to time here, we do have snacks for anybody, help yourself and treat, and anything else, Mary, that I missed? Yes.
I started some, pussy willows, if anybody wants those, the bees are supposed to like them, and they bloom early in the year. So if you need something for your bees to eat, some pussy willows.
The only time I've seen those around, actually.
We have a neighbor that's got a bunch of them, so I just took some and brought them with me.
Does anybody else have anything else?
I was gonna say that I'm starting to see a few more places carry beekeeping equipment.
Yes.
Runnings has actually gotten a little bit.
Fleet Farm.
Yep, Fleet Farm. TSC surprised me, I was in there the other day, and they had a very limited amount, including a extra large bee suit. So if anybody needs an extra large suit, they had one. And they had some other boxes and stuff like that.
Well, if nobody has anything else, thanks for coming. Now comes the social part. So go ahead and have lunch, visit, ask questions, whatever you want. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Are you talking a bunch of that?